You're staring at your phone. Nothing new has loaded. You refresh it anyway. That itch, that restless static behind your eyes feels small, almost embarrassing, but that feeling has a body count. It has shaped migrations, wars, art, and the entire structure of your daily life. Boredom isn't a glitch in your mind. It might be the exact reason your mind exists at all. Here's the strange part. For most of human history, nobody wrote about boredom. Not because life was more exciting, because attention was survival. Your ancestors didn't have the luxury of an empty mind. An idle brain on the savannah was a brain not scanning for the rustle in the grass. So why do you feel it now, in a warm room, safe, fed, phone in hand? Psychologists call boredom an aversive state of wanting but not having satisfying activity. That definition comes from Dr. John Eastwood, a boredom researcher at York University. He spent years arguing that boredom isn't laziness. It's a signal. Alarm bell telling you that your attention isn't engaged with the world in a way that feels meaningful. Think about that. Your brain built an alarm system for meaninglessness, not for danger, not for hunger, for emptiness itself. That single fact changes everything about how you should treat the feeling. Consider how strange that is compared to your other alarms. Pain tells you something is damaged. Hunger tells you something is missing from your body. Fear tells you something might kill you. But boredom tells you nothing external is wrong at all. The room is safe. The body is fed. The threat list is empty. And still, something inside you sounds an alarm anyway. That's not a malfunction. That's a very old, very specific kind of intelligence. Go back further. 2 million years ago, your ancestors' brains were expanding faster than almost any trait in evolutionary history. Bigger brains meant more room for something new. Idle time between tasks. A gap. And gaps are dangerous for a species that needs to keep moving, keep foraging, keep surviving, unless that gap gets filled with something useful. This is where the theory gets strange. Some researchers now argue boredom evolved specifically to push you toward novelty, not toward comfort, toward the unfamiliar path, the unexplored valley, the unfamiliar face. Boredom, in this view, is a built-in restlessness generator, engineered to stop you from getting too comfortable in one place, one task, one thought. Why would evolution punish comfort? Because comfort for a hunter-gatherer often meant a shrinking world. The same berries, the same watering hole, the same 12 people, genetic diversity, new alliances, new food sources, all of it depended on somebody getting restless enough to walk over the next hill. You are, quite literally, the descendant of the ones who couldn't sit still. Picture 2 early humans standing at the edge of a familiar valley. One feels satisfied, the food is adequate, the water is close. Why leave? The other feels that same restless static you felt an hour ago, scrolling your phone. She doesn't have a word for it. She just feels compelled to walk toward the ridge she's never crossed. One of them is more comfortable today. The other is more likely to find the next water source when the current one dries up. Comfort wins in the short term. Restlessness wins across generations. That's the trait evolution made, over and over, until it was written into the wiring of your brain before you were born. You didn't choose to feel bored on a slow afternoon. Something older than choice installed that feeling millions of years before you existed. Now fast forward to 2014. Dr. Sandy Mann, a psychologist at the University of Central Lancashire, ran a study where she had participants complete an intentionally dull task, copying numbers from a phone book before asking them to think of creative uses for a plastic cup. The bored group generated more original ideas than the group that skipped the boring task entirely. Boredom didn't waste their time. It rerouted their minds. Your brain, starved of external stimulation, starts generating its own. It wanders into memory, into fantasy, into problem-solving you didn't know you needed. This is sometimes called the default mode network, a set of brain regions that light up specifically when you're not focused on a task. It's not idle. It's working, just not on what's in front of you. Notice what that means for the way you've probably judged yourself. That daydream during a meeting, that drifting thought in the shower, that half-formed idea that showed up while you were doing something completely unrelated. None of that was your focus failing. That was a different, older system taking over the moment the newer one ran out of demands. Some of your best ideas were never generated by trying. They arrived because you finally stopped trying long enough for something else to speak. That's a strange kind of trade. The very discomfort you spend most of your day trying to avoid is the exact condition your best thinking depends on. So why does modern boredom feel so much worse than creative? Because you almost never let it finish its job. The moment that itch appears, you reach for the phone. You refresh the feed. You fill the gap before your brain has time to wander anywhere useful. Dr. Aaron Westgate, a psychologist who studies meaning and boredom at the University of Florida, has proposed what's sometimes called the meaning and attentional components model. In simple terms, boredom hits hardest when a task feels both effortful and pointless. Not just hard, pointless. Your brain isn't rejecting difficulty. It's rejecting a task that offers no story, no purpose, nothing to attach meaning to. That reframes almost every boring moment you've ever had. The waiting room wasn't boring because it was empty. It was boring because nothing in it connected to anything you cared about. Now compare that to the moments you've never once called boring, even when nothing was happening. Lying in the grass as a kid, watching clouds shift shape for an hour, sitting in silence next to someone you love. Saying nothing and somehow not wanting to leave. Same lack of stimulation. Completely different feeling. What changed wasn't the activity. It was whether your mind found a thread worth following. That's the part modern life keeps interrupting. Here's the twist your ancestors never had to face. They lived in a world of forced attention. Predators, weather, hunger. Their boredom, when it appeared, was rare, and it pushed them outward, toward exploration, toward each other, toward new solutions. You live in a world engineered to erase that gap before it opens. Every app, every notification, every autoplay button exists specifically to intercept the itch before it becomes a thought, which means the ancient alarm bell in your head is still ringing. It's just being silenced faster than it's ever been silenced in human history. Think about how fast that silencing happens. A study gap that once lasted minutes, standing in line, waiting for a kettle to boil, sitting on a train, now lasts under 3 seconds before a screen fills it. Researchers who study attention and technology have pointed out that this isn't accidental. Products are explicitly designed around the discomfort of boredom, engineered to intercept it before it can do what it evolved to do. The alarm goes off. Something answers it instantly, every single time, before you ever have to sit with the question it was asking. An alarm that never finishes ringing never delivers its message. What happens to a species that never lets its own restlessness finish speaking? You don't need an evolutionary study to answer that. You already feel it. The scroll that doesn't satisfy, the show you watched without absorbing, the gap you filled without ever wandering into it. Boredom was never the enemy. It was the mechanism that built curiosity, art, migration, invention, connection. Every one of those began the same way. Someone sat still long enough to feel that itch, and instead of silencing it, they followed it somewhere new. Look at what that pattern actually produced. The earliest cave paintings weren't made by artists rushing between urgent tasks. They were made in the gaps, in the long dark hours when hunting was done, and the fire was low, and nothing external demanded attention. Someone's mind wandered toward a shape on a wall, and instead of dismissing it, they picked up a piece of charcoal. The same pattern shows up in migration. Entire populations didn't move continents because conditions became unbearable overnight. Often they moved because a smaller, quieter pressure built for generations, an itch passed down, a restlessness that eventually outweighed the comfort of the familiar coastline. Multiply that single feeling by thousands of years, and you get the human species scattered across every continent on Earth. Even invention follows the same quiet mechanism. Long stretches of unstructured time show up again and again in the biographies of people who changed how entire fields worked. Not constant urgent output. Gaps. Walks with no destination. Afternoons with nothing scheduled. The idle hours where a half-formed question was finally allowed to finish forming. None of that happens if the itch gets answered in under 3 seconds. So here's a harder question. What has modern life never gotten the chance to build, simply because the boredom that would have built it kept getting interrupted before it finished its sentence? You'll never see that specific invention, that specific insight, that specific connection between two ideas, because the mind that might have produced it reached for a glowing rectangle instead of sitting with the discomfort a little longer. That's not a moral failing. It's not about willpower. It's about recognizing what the feeling is actually for, so you stop treating it like something to eliminate on contact. So the next time that static rises behind your eyes, the next time your thumb reaches automatically for the glowing rectangle, pause. Let it sit for a second longer than usual. That discomfort isn't empty. It's the same ancient pressure that once pushed a hungry ancestor over an unfamiliar hill. It's still trying to push you somewhere. The question was never why you feel bored. The question is what you'll let it build now that you know it's not a glitch. Maybe that's the real difference between you and every ancestor who came before the glowing rectangle existed. They had no choice but to let the itch run its course. It pushed them over ridges, into new alliances, onto blank cave walls with nothing but charcoal and time. You have a choice now, every single time that static rises. Answer it instantly, the way the whole modern world is built for you to do. Or let it sit. Let it get uncomfortable. Let it ask its full question before you reach for anything at all. It's the reason you're here at all.